Good. I'm glad you're ready to rock. It's your job. And if you weren't ready to rock, other people aren't going to rock for you, you know?
It's true. You gotta lead the rock.
Oh, yeah. All right, Dave. How are you ready?
Yes, we are ready.
Excellent.
It has been shared.
Because we are live on Facebook. That's right. With my friends, Dave and Trey. What's up?
Hello.
Now, Trey, where are you today?
I'm in Dallas, Texas. I'm performing at a conference here.
And how are you feeling about
it? Intrigued. I just came up from Austin, Texas, and did my safe space tour down there. And it's a very interesting conference. It's at a Church of Christ, not a United Church of Christ, but a Church of Christ. So it's a lot of conservative folks here that have come to kind of try to understand more about the LGBT community and kind of wrestling with that and their faith. And so it's a little more sensitive of an environment than maybe I expected or I'm used to, but I'm excited to be here.
All right. Well, so Dave, what are you thinking? What kind of questions do you want to talk to Trey about?
I'm just wondering, like, when he says sensitive, does that mean like when you're rocking out on stage, you have to keep your shirt on? Is that like what you're saying?
I think they want me to keep my pants and shirt on, which is pretty wild. So
that's awesome.
And I'm self-editing because this is live on Facebook.
Hey, you guys never said I had to keep my shirt off on this interview, so
no,
you never know what's going to happen.
Viewership will skyrocket.
Oh yeah.
So whatever it takes.
So Trey, first of all, thank you for allowing us to use your song "Love Is Love" on the road to Edmond. People love it. People love the song. People love that aspect of the film. So thank you very much. So we don't know each other. We've connected a little bit via text and so forth. And I've read a little bit about your story, but I know there are quite a few people that may be watching or watching this later that don't know your story. I know you started Everyday Sunday in 1997. Hey, who was that guy?
I have no idea. Hello. There's all kinds of folks walking through. Perfect timing. I love it.
It's like the random cat that walks through sometimes.
A lot of random cats. Meow. Awesome. Sorry, go on.
So hilarious. I love it. So awesome.
I'm at this conference and I did not know where to set up. And all I was trying to find was a quiet area that it might work. So
it's all good.
We're going for it.
So 97, you start a band. I'm assuming you probably grew up in other bands prior to that, but this band, Everyday Sunday, tell us about that ride of music.
Well, I was a teenager and I thought, I got involved with this youth group at a kind of an evangelical church where these kids would write songs and play them for the youth group. And I thought that was pretty badass. So I thought maybe I could do that too. And so I grew up teaching myself how to play chords on a piano. And, I grew up doing professional theater downtown Columbus, Ohio, where I'm from. And so I wrote a couple songs and put a band together to play it. And several years later, after my freshman year of college, I signed a record deal and been on tour most of my adult life. I definitely grew up in that very evangelical world as somebody who also grew up very much in love with the Bible and my faith and wanting to understand what it meant to be a man of God. I think I was always wrestling with ideas of scripture and theology and why I believed what I believed. And I was just this nerdy kid as a teen who read the Bible front to back, Genesis through Revelation 6 times. I memorized the book of James. I was in Bible Bowl. We had buzzers. And yeah, so that was kind of like, something I was very passionate about. I grew up in a more of a Calvinist home, which for those of you that don't know what that is, it's this idea that God has predestined certain people to be saved, and everyone else apparently was predestined to be a child of the devil and burn in hell for eternity. And so then getting involved in a more evangelical, free will kind of youth group where everyone has the right to, or choice to believe in God if they want, or be a Christian if they want, or it still had this very either you're in or you're out mentality. It just looked a little different and was maybe felt a bit less awful. And so, yeah, I don't know. Besides being a suppressed gay kid, I also was wrestling with all this kind of theological stuff as well. And so on top of that, starting a band and writing songs. And as somebody who's always wanted to be extremely self-aware and to try to understand more about myself, there was this huge part of myself that I was incapable of being self-aware about. I think when you grow up being brainwashed to believe you can be something that you're not, it really messes with you. And I've had a couple years to process that now, but at the time I really believed I could choose to be straight and that I could fall in love with a girl and be a great straight married man. And so I tried. I wanted to fall in love. I wanted to have a family. And when you don't really know what to base your experience off of, when you don't really have anything else to base your experience off of, I ended up putting all my faith into that. And so I got married. I honestly, I had never even made out with a girl before I got married. I just thought, prayed, fingers crossed it was all going to magically work. And it did not, but I kept trying. I kept believing. It was very torturous. And then again, when you're in the middle of any kind of traumatic situation, sometimes it's hard to see what it could be like on the other side of that. And so it just took me a long time to come to a place where I could accept myself and love myself and admit to myself, let alone anybody else, that I was a gay man. And so, all these things, the band thing, the faith part, being married, it just kind of all kept stacking on top of each other. But one thing about touring my whole adult life is, one thing I believe is when you do see the world and kind of traveling all across the US, I've been in all 50 states, I've been in 20 countries. You start to see that there's a lot of people that actually think a little bit differently than maybe what you grew up believing, or what you thought was the normal thing to think. And so I think, traveling does a lot for your worldview and challenges you. And I'm very thankful for that. But I also think I kept reading, I kept studying, I kept trying to understand why I thought what I did. And fortunately for me, I was reading people like Rob Bell and eventually met people like Trip Fuller and people that really helped me grow to new places and in my faith journey and in my life, and eventually to be able to accept myself.
Thank you, first of all, for sharing all of that. One of the questions that I know a lot of people that I know or friends that I have that maybe, frankly, don't even have any friends who would identify as LGBTQ, is I hear you say, man, I was a suppressed gay kid. I was trying to go the path of being married. And so when or what was that like to have these feelings, but not be able to embrace those feelings? And then even, my guess is pray them away, somehow like, oh God, and I don't know what that journey was like for you, but I'd love to hear if that's something you'd be willing to share.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a big question, but I think for me, again, you're so brainwashed to think that's not what you are. And then, but also like, it's so weird how compartmentalized it all becomes, because even though you are trying to convince yourself that's not what you are, and you could never admit to anybody that you have those attractions, or that you feel the way you do, or feel the shame or the guilt or any of that stuff.
Had you been told?
Every night you're laying in bed praying to God, please don't let me be gay. Please don't let me be gay. And that's it's a tough thing to figure out how much damage that actually does on you mentally.
Had you been told by either your parents or pastors or youth pastors, like explicitly, like this is what the Bible teaches against it? Or did you kind of just pick up culturally that, okay, this was not something that was acceptable?
Yeah, both. I mean, both. You constantly hear the rhetoric, God made Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve, and
right.
and things that it's an abomination, and and there's just the obvious things that it's just like, we know that our church doesn't believe in that. We think it's wrong. We get angry when Ellen came out on her TV show, or when California legalized gay marriage, or I don't even know where to begin to try to open that can, because it's so loaded. It's so like constantly, your church would never marry a couple like that. That there's this big idea. And then, not only is it my family, it's my church. It's then touring in churches all over the world that are all against this thing, and because those are the kind of churches that bring in Christian bands. And so, I mean, it's all of it. It's this hugely stacked thing. And you can't even begin to try to explain. I was just talking to these guys that are part of my safe space group, and they're here at the conference, and just really wonderful people. They actually met in conversion therapy, and they were both married for like 20 some years each and had 3 kids each. And, one of the guys, he was telling me how when he was younger, he remembers something about when he was younger. He's a bit older than I am, but he remembers being a kid during the AIDS epidemic of the 80s. And he remembers hearing his uncle talking to his father on in the living room on TV. They were talking about the AIDS epidemic, and he would say he remembers his uncle saying, well, God's finally given them all what they deserve. He's going to kill every single one of them faggots. And he remembers his dad saying, good. And that was just enough, Yeah. I mean, and that's just like one small example of the infinite things we have heard our entire lives. And it is changing, but it's not changing quick enough. And there's still so much damage that's happening. And it's sad. It's abuse. It's traumatic, and it's sad how little empathy still so many people in that evangelical church world have towards this abuse.
What was your? I know it's a long journey, but what was that journey like, especially toward the end, as you began to come to grips and say, okay, I can be honest about who I am and embrace that as being, who God made me to be. Like, take us through that journey just a little bit.
My journey to self-acceptance, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, I was saying how compartmentalized it all feels, because several years before I was able to accept myself, I was definitely progressing in my faith and my own understanding of the Bible, and how I looked at it. And so I was actually able to come to affirm other people way before I could actually accept myself, because it still did not feel like an option mentally for myself. And I just thought, I just wouldn't even let myself go there. I just thought, just do whatever it takes. Don't be gay. Don't be gay. And there's still obviously all this shame and guilt and feeling like I thought I was sacrificing for myself to do whatever it took to be what my wife needed me to be. And it just took me a really long time to realize that I was never going to be what my wife needed me to be. And that she was going through just as much torture as I was when we were not able to be that for each other. And so, but it was always this taboo thing, that lack of intimacy. We never could talk about it because, I mean, like good church kids, you don't talk about those kinds of things, and that possibly can't be it. And so, it took several years and kind of for life to hit the fan a little bit to have to actually face that with each other. And it was scary. You know, I remember her asking me finally after 7 years of marriage and 2 kids and an extremely torturous relationship when it came to intimacy, asking me if I was gay. And it scared me so much because I just thought it would be this thing I would never face. And I don't know, everything was racing through my brain, but what I knew in that moment is that my life was not about to ever look the same again, because I thought in that moment I can either keep suppressing this down even further and make everything worse, or maybe this is that chance I thought I would never have to finally be set free. And so at that point, I couldn't even admit to myself that I was gay, let alone her or anyone else. And so all I knew to say was, I don't know, but I think I need to get help. And then over some months of counseling and reaching out to some people, I finally was able to admit to myself for the first time that I was gay.
What did that feel like?
The first time I said those words out loud, I didn't even say I'm gay. I said, I think I might be gay. And I just, I was so scared to utter it into existence. And I lost it. I just cried and cried and cried and bawled. And, but with all of that grief and just kind of having all that stuff pent up, I also feel like in that moment, there was this release, this like, oh my gosh, I said it. And almost like this like sense of sigh, like a sense of being able to breathe for a second, like feeling like some sense of freedom and I don't know, maybe just a sense of a tiny bit of me being set free. Yeah. And I think the more I said it, the more freeing it was and the more liberating it was. And I finally came to the place where I was able to say it as a matter of fact, this is who I am. But I think when I did get to that point, because of people in my life like Tripp and Rob and some other people, I'm so thankful that I didn't feel ashamed of being gay. I felt horrible, of course, for hurting my wife and the pain that I put her through. But I also realized in that moment, and thank God I'd already done the legwork to understand this for myself, but I also understood in that moment that I was a victim in this too. And I never meant to hurt her. But when you grow up being brainwashed to believe you can be something you're not, you end up making really messed up decisions sometimes. And I was doing my best, the best I knew how to, with the way I was convinced to believe growing up, and it was not good enough. It did not only hurt me, but it hurt my wife. And this happens to people all the time. And I think, for us, once you have kids, it's like as shitty as it is, you wouldn't trade it for the world. It's like, well, here we are, but now this is our chance to be able to be honest about it and to figure out what it looks like from here to be our best selves, to where we can show our kids that it's okay for them to be their best selves, and to give each other the chance to find someone who can love us the way we deserve to be loved and need to be loved. And so I knew when I was able to accept myself that I was not going to tuck my tail between my legs or be ashamed of who I was. But I was also convinced in that moment how important it was for me to share my story, to try to help keep as many other people from going through what I have or any kind of torture as possible.
Mm-hmm. So this, for lack of a better word, story breaks at some point, right? It becomes public news. Who was the publication or whatever that kind of that shared that information with the world, and what were the ripples that went out, both positively and negative impact on your life?
Yeah. So when I came out, I wasn't quite sure how I was going to do it, and I was pretty nervous, of course, but I also knew how important it felt to share my truth on my own terms, and to try to share my truth in a way that could help as many people as possible. And so sort of serendipitously, I'm here in Dallas, where I actually flew to come see Tripp and Rob Bell at a conference they were both speaking at, to try to one, I just needed to see both of them for comfort and peace, but also just seeking some wisdom on how I was going to do all this. And I ended up a few months after that coming out publicly to my fans on the cover of actually just a local magazine in Columbus called 614 Magazine. And Religion News Services and Jonathan Merritt picked it up, and it ended up kind of spreading everywhere. It was in the New York Times, Billboard Magazine, CBS, ABC, NBC, CNN, Fox News. It ended up, I guess, becoming the number one trending topic in the world on Facebook for a few days. And for the positive, I would say, like, as I went through all that, I realized that a lot of love got poured out onto me that really drowned out any of the hate. And for as much as people might complain about mainstream media or whatever, I was very thankful for it in that moment, because I felt like maybe the world's changing just a little bit. 6 years before I came out, Jennifer Knapp came out, and it was hell for her. It was awful. And she got so much hate poured out on her. And I think, there were definitely hateful people towards me. But those people, you were nervous to act hateful because, or not everybody, not on YouTube or, social media, but it was definitely a lot different because there were a lot of people coming to my aid, coming to my defense. And, I ended up going on The View and getting nominated for a GLAAD award for that interview. And there was a lot of beautiful people that poured out a lot of love on me. On the negative side, of course, yeah, there were hateful people. I have faced a lot of lack of acceptance and hurt from people very close to me in my life. I, of course, lost all of my career in the Christian music world, and Christian radio stopped playing me. My albums were no longer allowed to be in Christian bookstores. Christian festivals couldn't have me anymore. Christian promoters, all those things. And so all that stuff is, of course, horrible. And at the same time, I don't think any of that really mattered to me. It paled so much in importance to sharing my truth and my journey. And I think about when I was younger, if somebody could have done that for me, how much that could have changed my life. And I think, So it was a very surreal experience. Tripp's very talkative on this Facebook Live, isn't he?
So now let's see, how many years has that been since?
I came out 2 summers ago. Yeah.
2 summers. Okay.
Yeah.
So a couple years. What have you been doing over the last couple of years? Because I know there's I see posts on Facebook and the safe space that you have on Facebook and things that you're doing. What are you doing now? You've got music out, obviously you're continuing to put great music out. Tell me what you're trying to do to not only express yourself artistically, but share your story.
I mean, I'm a dad. I have 2 kids, so I've been busy being a dad. But also, as far as my work, I felt extremely passionate about trying to use it to continue to make a difference. And it's also therapy for me, to be able to use my art to express all the emotions that I've had. And so I did put out my first solo album. I kind of hung up my old Christian band Everyday Sunday, and I just put out my first solo record this last year. And I've been busy touring that. I started working on my very first book. I started a secret group on Facebook called Trey's Safe Space, and it's now got thousands of LGBTQ people and quite a few allies as well. And just kind of trying to create spaces where people can share their journey and ask questions and share their heartbreak, but also their triumphs. And I think doing that on social media, but also in real life at concerts. And then even around my concerts, I've been doing my Safe Space tour, which I just did in Austin, and we'll be doing up here in Dallas as well. And I've been going all around the country doing that. And
what does that mean? What is that when you say Safe Space tour? What does that look like?
Yeah, it's a place where it's been at breweries and bars and clubs and houses and all kinds of different spaces. Some churches where I just go and share my story and play some of my songs and talk about my heart, and then end up hanging out with a bunch of people who share their stories back with me. And so it's kind of all culminating into this really, beautiful spaces where we get to do that. And then, this December, I'm throwing my very first Safe Space weekend in Columbus and having everybody from the group all congregate in Columbus, Ohio. And I'm excited for that as well. But yeah, I've been trying to create spaces where I can go meet with a lot of these people face to face. And it's been really cool to do so far.
Yeah, I've had the opportunity to be a part of that Facebook group for a few weeks now. And I see when somebody posts, and I don't get a chance to read all of them, but a lot of this is new for me personally, because I grew up as a evangelical, non-denominational, kind of world, was a pastor for 10 years, haven't been a pastor for a while. I'm married to a woman for 24 years, have kids, but there's been this desire for inclusion in me for many years. And not now that I'm not a pastor in a certain context, I can now enter into these conversations and be with people in a whole different way than when I was a pastor, right?
Yeah, it's crazy how much of your job is on the line when you're being hired to believe a certain set of beliefs or not espouse a certain set of beliefs. And man, that stuff does damage to all kinds of people too. I know a closeted worship pastor that's, it sucks.
Oh, sorry, yeah, of course. Yeah, no. So as I read these stories, and many of the individuals are posting from around the world about their experience that's so similar to what you just shared that it's scary, right? It's just so parallel. It's not even funny. And as I read these stories, I just, my heart breaks with sadness that these individuals have experienced that. And I also am so aware of how many people that I know that are against these individuals, or against the idea of someone identifying as LGBTQ, but they don't know any stories. They know no stories. They don't have a relationship with someone who has shared a story just like yours, to go, I didn't choose this, right? I'm not choosing these feelings. Like I've actually prayed that they would go away. That component is so powerful. I want people to hear these stories, obviously, in an appropriate way, but to have you share your story, I'm so compelled by it. I'm so compelled by each one of those stories that gets posted. My heart is broken by the pain that they've experienced, and then simultaneously, my heart is full of joy that they found freedom, that they found the safe space to have freedom. And as your prayer would be, that they would have that same freedom and safe space in their life everywhere they go. So it's an honor to read those stories as a part of the group. And so I appreciate you sharing your story today, and appreciate you being a part of the film for sure. So
it's an honor to be a part of it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And our goal, as you know, with the film is to stir up conversation, to have people. I loved what this gal, Anna Galladay, who we just interviewed yesterday, she said that people who are against homosexuality, if they could honor people who have been created by God by seeking to understand and seeking more information. And so oftentimes they don't seek to understand, right? It's like, oh no, this is what the Bible says. This is what my pastor said. This is what's right. This is what's wrong. Right. And there's not a sense of like, okay, this is like, how do I honor this individual by seeking to understand, by hearing their story, by seeking deeper into the scriptures? That person isn't that what a human being deserves, to be listened to and to be sought to understand? I think that is so compelling for people who are wrestling with this issue. And as Tripp says, there's so many people who want to be inclusive, yet there's a wall in their brain that says, but I can't be because the Bible says this. There's but I can't be because my pastor says this. But yet there's a desire in their heart. And I think by hearing more stories and seeking to understand, even obviously the depth of Scripture, that there's an openness. But so many people aren't willing to ask those questions, that aren't willing to read the book because it's scary. It's almost like you were saying, like, it's too scary for me to accept myself. It's too scary. I can't even get there. Right. And so I think for a lot of people who, maybe straight and are wrestling with these issues, are going, no, it's too scary for me to even think about it. I can't even go there. And, and my hope is so.
That's beautiful. I think hearing stories is hugely important, but also diving into close relationships, caring, empathetic relationships with LGBTQ people is extremely important too. And that's why so many people, I think for parents, when kids come out, they either lose their closeness to their child and this divide happens, or you see parents' hearts change, where it really forces them to have to think about these things they don't want to think about. And so when I was in Austin 2 nights ago, there were college kids there. There was a lot of young adults, but there was also some older people. And one couple came, and the husband came up after the event to me, and he just said, "Hey, our 21-year-old son just came out to us 2 months ago, and we have just been struggling to try to understand." And he was so moved hearing my story. And it was really beautiful because he just ended up saying, I want you to know that I'm proud of you. And I'm also proud of my son. And I think that was like a revelation for him. And I just thought that was so powerful and beautiful. And then there was another couple there that came up to me afterwards. And, most of these events I do have been all adults and like kind of 18 up. But I was surprised when I went to this event in Austin that some people brought their teenagers. And I was a little like, oh, I might need to be careful how much I say here. And they just insisted that I'm extremely vulnerable and honest. And so I was. And what was cool is this other couple brought their 16-year-old daughter and their 14-year-old son. And they said they'd been listening to me my entire career since I was like 21 and my first album came out. And their kids were little. And they said when I came out a couple years ago that it really challenged them, just even as my fans, like, well, like even what if one of our kids ended up being gay, and to see them show up with their kids, to have them listen to my story and to continue to support me. And they said it really challenged them to think more about why they believed what they believed. And they've been on this journey with me as well over the last couple of years. And they're this place where they're huge LGBT supporters and they're passing that on to their kids. And I think it's super beautiful, but I think it's also super important because you'll find that most people that are scared to have those conversations are also not engaging in personal, deep, meaningful relationships with LGBTQ people.
Right. Trip, what are some thoughts? What's going through your head?
Well, I mean, for me, I was just pumped that Trey had a song in the movie because he's a very good friend. And I've enjoyed watching what you've done both as an artist and then also as someone, I think, who discovered a new part of your vocation, right? So like when you're a contemporary Christian musician, the institutions are all exist for the distribution of your art, finding people, that kind of stuff, be it festivals, youth groups, and all that kind of stuff. And one of the things I've been excited about what you've done is, I mean, your first solo album is so much your autobiography, and the work you're doing both online and in person is intimately connected to insisting that finding a safe space and a place where you can be fully yourself doesn't mean you have to leave your faith in the church behind.
Yeah.
And so many people I know have really, really good reasons because of how they've been harmed by the church.
Sure. Yeah.
In the process of coming out and the process of coming out to themselves and stuff, that the church and faith has done so much damage that I understand when they're like, Trip, I think that's just BS. I can't handle it. Maybe you can tell some of them not to be mean to their kids.
Yeah. Well, and here's the, I don't mean to cut you off, but like the thing that allowed me to hang on to my faith is because I had people like you that were already affirming, that were already saying, no, it's cool to love Jesus and like gay people too. And the people that run from the church are people that have been handed very bad versions of Jesus and their faith, ones that exist in fear. And so, if you don't want your kid to reject the faith tradition that you've raised them in, when you're keeping certain people out of that group, when you're saying, oh, they don't belong, and then all of a sudden one of your kids connects to one of those groups and says, oh, wait, I guess that means I don't belong. And I think another reason that it's so important for people to do the work because if I didn't already have those affirming people in my life, in my faith tradition, I don't know that I could have stayed either.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that came up, and I believe this was the first time we talked a long time after you came out, and something you said that really struck me, and I've been thinking about it a lot, is that the understanding of Christianity and the gospel that you were handed kind of forced every person into the same narrative of getting right with God, that you're a sinner, and here's how a sinner gets right with God. And so if you feel like something's amiss or aloof or whatever, the process of dealing with that part of you is to identify it, call it a sin, and then you need to seek forgiveness. When a lot of the issues people deal with, not that there isn't things that are sinful and stuff, but if the only story of healing we have is sin, then places where we feel shame or disrespected or harmed or wounded or excluded, to get right with those issues, we label it sin, and then the church is like, we can fix it. But if it's really, we feel shame because of what we've internalized from our parents and our faith community, then we want to see it as sin. And I like, what is it? I don't know, like what is the bigger image of healing that that you're drawn to? And I really see it expressed in the new album in a whole bunch of different ways.
Yeah. I think a big part of my work that I have felt is extremely important is why it's not just about loving gay people or accepting gay people in your church. It's not saying we're welcoming and then to only further marginalize and silence those people. That is not reversing the damage or helping make it better. It's only making it worse, and it's causing further guilt and shame and suicide and self-harm. And so to me, until you deal with the reality of not only are gay people not sinners because they're gay, but in fact that they've been created by the divine this way, and that it's a blessing for them to be their best selves as an LGBTQ person. When a gay person can stop seeing themselves as something is wrong with me, something is inherently wrong with me, when they can start to see that, oh wait, maybe nothing is wrong with me, and maybe God loves me just the way I am. And it's not this thing that is broken that needs to get fixed, or this thing that's broken that can never be fixed, and I have to tuck my tail between my legs and be ashamed for the rest of my life. None of those things are helpful. And so for me, it's we have to stop calling homosexuality a sin. It is damaging, and it is unhelpful, and it's doing infinite harm. And so I think for me, it's more about taking pride in who I am and who others are and the way that they're created, and trying to have the conversation of, let's really play this thing out the way you see it, and the reality of what it's doing, and trying to continue to have those conversations of what is the reality. The reality is, if you think it's a sin, but you're like trying to love me anyway, one, we probably don't have a very close relationship, because I don't feel very loved by you. I don't feel very accepted by you. And on top of that, the fact that that you think I'm broken, and you want me to be silent in your church. Of course, I cannot be in leadership or on staff or anything like that. But then on top of that, you would never allow me to be married. You're just furthering this shame and this guilt, and it's extremely damaging. And so, and then this idea that you think that somehow with your world, your biblical view, you think all LGBTQ people are called to celibacy for the rest of their lives. And God, I heard this pastor of a church I grew up at talking about how in the same sermon, he's talking against same-sex marriage, but he's also going under the assumption that all of his boys are straight, and the whole lust thing, right? Well, don't lust, but one day, boy, it's going to be awesome because you're going to marry a girl and it's going to be great. And I heard that kind of stuff my whole life growing up, and so I was like, okay, I'm waiting for it to be awesome. It's not awesome yet, and and all of a sudden you realize, oh, that's only if you're straight. Otherwise, apparently you believe God expects you to be lonely and miserable. And that works for this pastor as long as all his boys end up being straight. But if one of them's gay, all of a sudden his like pumping them up, oh, it sucks right now, and just keep it in your pants. But one day, man, it's going to be awesome. unless you're gay. Wait, you can't be gay. You're my kid. My kid wouldn't be gay. Like, it's so stupid, and it is hurtful, and it sucks. But yeah, I'm intrigued and calling that stuff out for what it is. And I think, it's been interesting to even see the change, the shift in the evangelical church from when we were kids. There was this idea that you could choose to be straight, and that God made Adam and Eve, not Adam and Stephen. Being gay is a choice. And, enough people have continued to tell their stories. We talk about the importance of story. Enough people have bared witness to that. It is not a choice. That finally churches are giving up on that motto. And now they're just trying to say, oh, well, yeah, maybe I believe that you were born this way, or whatever reason you had no choice in the situation that you are gay. But now we just expect you to be lonely and miserable for the rest of your life, as if that is somehow a better answer.
So one of the things your new album does that I love is it sets these very different experiences in the same album, right? Like if you're used to listening to a contemporary Christian band, like 2 of your songs are on there, and then what you're asking Jesus help with is different, right? And so talk to me about what it was like to make an album with both, like, I'm going out dancing, this guy's cute, to a proclamation that the God who is love indeed loves all, to wrestling with the grief you have of the whole coming out process and things, to Don't Dance is my favorite song, just because I've always thought, I didn't know this until it was more in retrospect. I'm glad this invented. I'd never thought of it before, but the bridge where you're like, if you think I'm going to hell, don't dance to my music, is such a great line, because the album itself is like, hey, here's me being honest about all these different parts of me.
Yeah.
And I wonder what it's like to do that, because of the framework Christian music normally operates in. It's like always sanitized for Jesus flavored soccer moms,
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, well, first of all, that was actually the first line of the song that I wrote, and that melody just kept sticking in my head. And I was like, I don't know. I just wanted to write a whole song, and liberation, and kind of, I am having way too much fun to be concerned with your toxic worldview on life. And when you've lived your entire life suppressed, and like I was saying earlier, as somebody who's always wanted to be very self-aware, to have this major part of you that is so suppressed and you're so unself-aware about it, well, it's kind of embarrassing, to be honest. But also, it's also this thing where I never stopped writing songs. And as I continued to write songs while I was going through this process, like I said, it was therapy, but it was also like I was able to tap into a part of myself creatively that I had never been able to tap into. And it was just this amazing feeling of, like, I've always wanted to be as vulnerable as possible and as honest with myself and other people in my art. And I think that's what brings us true connection in our art and our conversations and anything we do. And so to feel like I had the freedom and freedom to express my vulnerability and my honesty and myself with literally zero limitation or care for what anybody else might think, but only thinking, how can I be vulnerable and honest in a way that my art can connect with other people that might feel the same way. And I just feel like this was the first time in my career that I finally was able to do that in the whole broadest way. And I think, with this album, every song feels extremely honest and extremely vulnerable in different ways. And it's sort of is the range of emotions that I had felt over this last couple of years, since I was able, face this and faced the grief, but also faced the light and the joy on the other side of it. And there are still things to continue to grieve. And unfortunately, so many of us in the LGBT community face so much hate from people we love and apathy. And I think there's still a lot of raw emotions, and I'm not here to pretend that those aren't there and those aren't real. But I also am the happiest I've ever been. I'm the most free I've ever been. I am so thankful to be in this place that I didn't even think was ever going to be possible. I just can't believe it's real. And I don't know. I hope I feel like that comes across in the records and art that I'm making. Yeah, it means a lot that you can feel that as well.
So we've had, over 50 different groups get together to screen the movie and stuff. And if they enjoyed the conversation and things after it, even the drinking bingo game, an opportunity to fully experience the road to Edmond. Maybe say a bit about what you do in the Safe Place Tour stuff, because one of the responses I've gotten from hosts is, they watch this movie that is a inappropriate buddy road trip comedy that then is wrestling with these progressive spiritual themes and such. They have a conversation, and then for those that are not at a place in their church or congregation and family to really know what next steps are, I think creating a space for everyone to share stories and things a really good opportunity. So what's an invitation to something to the Safe Space Tour look like?
Yeah, so I think people can go to my website and reach out to just invite me to wherever they would like me to come. And the big thing for me right now is I have lost it a lot, and I have had to start over in a lot of ways, and so I'm continuing to build support. So I definitely am not just doing work on the Safe Space Tour, but through my work online and my music and the Safe Space Tour, I'm looking to continue to gain support through my Patreon that I just launched. And as people support me on there, they're able to bring me out on my Safe Space Tour. And if you have brought me out on my Safe Space Tour and you're watching this, you also can have your own opportunity to have your own viewing party for this movie, and my music's in it, which is exciting too. So I think both of these things support each other, and the work that we're all doing is very connected. And I hope people get on board and continue to do things like this. And I think that's awesome that you guys have already had over 50 events. That's unbelievable. And I hope some of the people from my Safe Space group or that are on my page or wherever this is will check out this movie. And it's a really beautiful, moving, funny story. And yeah, it's good. And if you're watching this and you want me to come see you as well, we can do it all together. I'm down. So,
and next time we're together, we can watch a movie and play the drinking game, Trey.
Always.
And then we'll go live, and I will tell embarrassing stories about Evangelical Trey when we first started hanging out. And he goes, I'm in Europe, I think I should try a beer. Like, what kind of beer should I drink? And then he said things that I don't even count as beer. I got some doozies.
I love it. Throw it
all of them. I think I want to check with you. I don't want to Facebook Live some of the stories.
I'm kind of at this point in my life where I think I've put enough out there that I just don't care. So you never know, though. You look like you're ready to tempt that confidence.
Yeah, I can exaggerate. I'm a minister.
Yeah.
If you've preached, then you're allowed to exaggerate. You don't let the truth get in the way.
Amen to that.
All right, Dave.
So they can find you at TreyPearson.com, right?
That's me. Yeah.
And they can find you on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, obviously, to be able to connect.
All of it's just Trey Pearson. So go to any of those places. Type
and
that in there.
If somebody who's watching either is identifying with your story and maybe they haven't shared that with anybody else, or maybe they have a family member, you're open to, I assume, connecting with them in some way.
Yeah, and I would love to get you into my safe space group. I know Trip, both of you guys are in there, and they can add you to the group as well if you would like to be, or shoot me a message, and I will happily do it. And either way, for well over 2 years strong now, I've had people reach out to me every day and share their journeys back with me, and I love it. I enjoy it, and I'm meeting up with a bunch of those people even this weekend here in Dallas. So if you'd like to shoot me a message, go for it on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, any of those things. So
awesome. All right. And so if any of you watching want to host a screening of The Road to Edmond, you can go to theroadtoedmond.com, and you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can also check out what we call our VIP access experience. Not only you get to watch the film for as long as you want, but there's a 4-session video course that Trip has done called How Far is Too Far? The Bible and Sexuality. Dr. Trip Fuller, lots of pictures. This video. Yeah. There's
why am I not in any of them? That's what I want to know. Or am I?
Trip keeps his shirt on for the whole thing, unlike the movie. So if you want to see Trip without his shirt on, you can watch the movie. If you want to see Trip with his shirt off, watch the movie. If you want to see it with the shirt on, you watch the curriculum. So you can go to theroadtoedmond.com and check that out as well.
I would even say, even if you don't want to see Trip without his shirt on, can't imagine that kind of scenario, but let's say it exists, still watch the movie. You can close your eyes.
Yes. So a lot of upper body male nudity in the film.
It's a very different experience.
Yes.
I can attest to
that. We each had to get in the perfect figure for the film, and his involved like P90X.
Yeah.
What did yours involve, Trip?
900 bags of peanuts. P90X, 900 bags of peanuts. Yeah. All right. So here we are, theroadtoedmond.com, TreyPearson.com. Glad you guys have watched and are hanging out with us. Keep the conversation going. Yeah. Thanks, Trey.
Take care.